Hello, welcome to the first ever and hopefully the first of many Coach Carter education series. In this inaugural one, we're going to go over skeletal muscle structure and function. This is going to be a 6-part video series. We're going to have a bonus video after video 3, before video 4, just recapping what we've learned so far. But in video 1, in this video, we're going to go over skeletal muscle architecture. It's important to know at least the basics of structure, as structure dictates function. From there, we get to go into function, into sliding filament theory, which is the theory of how muscle contracts, how it moves you. From there, we're going to add the nervous system into it, how the neuromuscular system, nerves and muscles, interface together. Super interesting. Then we'll have our bonus video recapping 1, 2, and 3, kind of connecting it all together. Video 4, we're going to go over muscle fiber types, what they are, where they come from, can they change? We're going to answer a lot of questions and address a lot of myths in that space. And then video 5, rounding it all out with proprioceptors, different sensory organs in your muscles and tendons and joints that construct your movement in a big feedback loop. So, like I said, first video, today we're going to go over skeletal muscle architecture. It's important to note that skeletal muscle is one of 3 distinct muscle types in the human body. It's attached to bone, it is voluntary, which means that you move it, you choose to move it, right? You can't just think, heart beat faster, heart stop beating, right? You can actually think and move your limbs. It's multinucleated and striated. This just gets into the physiology part a little bit, but yeah, skeletal muscle represents the largest tissue system by mass in the human body. That statement's pretty widely accepted. Some researchers and exercise physiologists will actually go as far as to say skeletal muscle is the largest organ system in the human body, a title previously held by skin. But the more we learn about the metabolic and hormonal roles of skeletal muscle, the more that's becoming widely accepted. So again, primary functions, skeletal muscles, think movement, posture, stability, heat production, right? Shivering or even just using energy produces heat, and metabolic regulation. The more muscle you have, typically the healthier you are, especially later in life. Now, there are tons of skeletal muscles in the human body. We're not going to go into them in detail. We'll save that for anatomy and biomechanics lectures or classes that you might have. They're important to know, especially in this field, but outside of the scope of this video series, we're going to stay pretty general as just skeletal muscle. When we get into the structural hierarchy, right, the structural levels of skeletal muscle, you can think of it like a suspension bridge cable, how it's a big cable made up of smaller cables, that just help it with its function, right? Structure dictates function. So, starting out, every single one of those layers of muscle is surrounded by a layer of connective tissue. These layers of connective tissue converge to form the tendon that attaches to the bone in most cases. You can think about these levels as epi on the outside, peri is the next one, and then endo. If you just remember epi, peri, endo, you'll be good there, okay? They're not very different, but just remember epi, peri, endo, and you'll be good to go on that. Now the muscle layers, we're going to go from biggest to smallest. So if we start at biggest, think that's your named muscle, right? When you think bicep, when you think tricep, when you think of a specific quad muscle, okay, maybe your rectus femoris, that is the muscle belly. From there, we go down to the fascicle level. When we get to the fascicle level, I want you to think force transmission, pennation angle. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but this is the first division down. From there, we subdivide into fibers, muscle fibers, which is actually the cellular level of muscle. So if I say muscle cell, just know that is synonymous with muscle fiber, okay? Some of the largest human cells in the body, which is pretty cool. Definitely the longest. From there, we break down the cell into muscle fibrils or myofibrils. These are composed of sarcomeres, which we'll talk about on the next slide, that are linked end to end. Now these myofibrils are arranged in parallel or stacked on top and beneath and next to each other within the muscle fiber. Okay, so you've got a lot of fibrils per fiber. Every one of these fibrils is broken down into filaments, myofilaments, actin and myosin, your thin filaments and your thick filaments. We're going to go a lot into that in video 2, but for now just know, okay, we've got these levels: the belly, the named muscle, the fascicle, okay? Then we have the fiber, which is the muscle cell. The fiber is composed of many fibrils, which is composed of filaments, okay? If you can just get that in your head, commit it to memory, it'll help a lot with some of the physiology talks that we're going to have. So I mentioned sarcomere. These are the smallest contractile unit of muscle. Anything smaller than this is just one part of the contraction. But these units actually contract, and there's tons and tons and tons and tons of them all linked together in the myofibrils, that if you produce this much force with one of them, then just think hundreds and thousands of them contracting. It all adds together. So again, they're arranged in series, right? They're linked end to end, and then those are also in parallel within the muscle cell or muscle fiber. The main components of a sarcomere are the actin and the myosin, right? The myofilaments that we just talked about. These interact via cross-bridge cycling to produce force and shortening. Okay, we're going to go super deep into that in video number 2, but just know that we've got these thin filaments actin, these thick filaments myosin. They interact together to produce force and shortening, which takes place in the sarcomere, right? Which are linked together to make myofibrils, which are arranged in parallel to make a muscle fiber, right? We go back up the whole chain of command there. The organization of these sarcomeres with the myofilaments, actin and myosin, make visible lines, zones, and discs. So these just help us visualize how a muscle contracts, where the actin and myosin overlap. Just know we'll revisit those in video 2. Okay, pennation angles, we're not going to go super deep into this. I just wanted to mention it. If you were to take a biomechanics course, or maybe later if I make a biomechanics video, we'll talk more about pennation angles. But just think the angle at which a muscle attaches to a bone influences how much force it's able to produce, how fast the contraction is able to be, just a lot of those different functions. So you don't have to memorize these or anything, but I just thought it was important to point out when talking about skeletal muscle architecture. So video 1, we're done. Hopefully that was a good foundation builder for some of you. Maybe it was just pure review for some of you, but just remember, skeletal muscle, one of 3 types, the only type that we're going to talk about in this video series. It's got a hierarchical structure of fascicles, fibers, fibrils, filaments, right? And we have those epi, peri, endo, mesium connective tissue layers that converge to form the tendon that attaches to bone. The sarcomere is the smallest contractile unit. That's almost always a test question, so just remember that. And they are arranged in series to form myofibrils, which are arranged in parallel to form fibers, which are bundled to form fascicles, right? We can go all the way up the chain. And that these fascicles have different angles of pennation, which affect biomechanics and kinematics of movement for movement. In video 2, we're going to go over sliding filament theory, the actual physiology underlying muscle contraction. So I'll see you guys there.